Okay, hey, welcome to Arts and Entertainment with Chris and Randall. This is a little short piece I want to do where I just talk about my thoughts on Donald Trump. Okay, I want to talk about Trump not from a political perspective, but from an aesthetic perspective. I mean, uh, because I think that's something a lot of people miss about Trump. Maybe they do, maybe they don't, but people don't talk about it that much. Trump is he's an entertainer for the most part. I mean, just like Ronald Reagan, but Trump is much more accomplished an entertainer than Reagan ever was. He was on a reality show, and he had a he had a long acting career before being president. I mean, if you look at his IMDb, I mean, it's just goes on forever. But one thing that I find striking about Trump, and I watched almost all of his, I watched a lot of his rallies, okay, while he was campaigning, and I was struck by something that I don't know why nobody talks about it ever, but uh, Trump didn't perform his rallies as a politician. He performed his rallies as a stand-up comedian. Okay, so the typical stand-up, the way they do a set is they will start with either their best material, their best joke or jokes, or their second best joke or jokes, and then they'll quickly go into once they win the audience over, they quickly go into new material. So they introduce new material, they see what's working, what doesn't, material that they've done before, but maybe they've got it more polished this time. And Trump even had a set of notes, like most stand-up comics do, of like all the bits he was going to do every rally. I mean, but anyway, you go into the middle part, you do like your untested material, your experimental stuff. And that experimental stuff, if it hits, if you work it out, it might become like go into the top material, And then when you get to the end, you end big. Okay. You end with your biggest stuff. Okay. Or maybe your second biggest stuff. It depends. I mean, it depends what you want to do. But Trump would almost always end with, let's build that wall. Okay. That was his closer. Right. If you're a stand-up comic, you know exactly what Trump's doing, right? He's trying to close big. So the audience loves him at the end, right? And I watch a lot of his rallies, so I know that the stuff in the middle, a lot of the stuff in the middle that didn't work, his experimental stuff that didn't hit, he would never do it again, right? Because it was just stuff that he was trying, right? He was trying out, and a lot of the press, I don't know if the press knew what he was doing or not, but the press would a lot of times show his rallies, like CNN would. And then they would comment on the experimental stuff in the middle, stuff that he would never say again, And, one of the things that, one of the reasons Trump got so much coverage and so many ratings, is because he was always introducing new material. He knows that the media likes new material. So the other politicians would just give a typical politician thing is to just give the same speech over and over and over, right, to different audiences around the country. And the media is not going to show the same speech to a different audience over and over and over again, right? So Trump never did that, right? Trump would have maybe similar opening, similar closing, and maybe he would even tweak the opening and closing every time, but the middle would always be different, right? He'd even do stand-up comics call it topical material, where you talk about something that just happened, right? You talk about the news, right? So the middle part of Trump's act was the topical material, which is how a stand-up comic would do it. I mean, and also Trump would do audience work like a stand-up comic. Trump would do call and responses. He would, if somebody shouted something in the audience, he would interact with them. Politicians almost never interacted with people in the audience. If you watch, except unless they're a heckler. To shut them down. And Trump didn't get that many hecklers, but I'm sure everybody remembers he would threaten violence on hecklers or ask people in the crowd to do violence to them. I mean, not every stand-up comedian would get away with that, but Trump did. And Trump told a lot of jokes. A lot of things he said were meant to be jokes, meant to be humorous. So anyway, I guess what I'm saying is, Trump's playbook as a politician is the playbook of a stand-up comedian.
Wow, that is, it's really interesting. I've never thought about it that way because I definitely remember when Reagan was president, and people would say, well, he's an actor, he's a movie actor, and he's giving speeches like monologues from a movie. Like there was a movie called Newt Rockne, where he played this coach, and he tells the guys in the team, let's go win this one for the Gipper. So he would constantly reference stuff like when he did that. But even when he was giving a new speech, and Peggy Noonan was a very famous speechwriter, he would deliver them. But a movie actor isn't really having a conversation with an audience like a stand-up. They're just saying things that are moving you. And certainly, I think every president has had one or two good one-liners or an extemporaneous off-the-cuff joke. But I have to agree with you. I think Trump is really the first one to very consciously use the techniques of a working stand-up comic. I remember, I think it may have been a year ago, he talked about the fact that he doesn't drink alcohol, because alcoholism runs in his
That's
family.
very much like a stand-up, right? There's a lot of stand-ups who are
here's what he
dry.
said. He said, "Could you imagine what it would be like if I was an alcoholic?" Or no, he said, "Could you imagine what it'd be like if I did drink?" He said it like that, and I remember like Seth Meyers showed the clip, and Seth Meyers was stumped because basically Trump set himself up for the perfect joke, and then he delivered the perfect punchline like a stand-up would, playing off of his own established persona. Like Trump actually, like a good stand-up comic, not only knows his positive persona, but he even knows how he's been caricatured. Like you saw Eddie Murphy's Raw.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what's kind of cool about that concert movie is that Eddie Murphy actually starts riffing on what it's like to have a giant public persona like Eddie Murphy. Hey, Eddie Murphy, fuck you. Or they think I can fight like I can in the movies.
Right. I remember that.
It's interesting how Trump knows how he is seen, even in the most negative sense, and he will play and have fun with that, like a comic. Yeah, and I guess comics sometimes also will just go off script and do an extemporaneous piece because the crowd is laughing at a particular line of humor, so he's going to milk it and riff on it more. And I've seen Trump do that where he doesn't realize how ginned up he gets an audience, and then instead of moving to the next topic, he'll be like, "Oh, you want more?" and he'll just literally do more.
Right. That's another thing I want to say about Trump is something I noticed about him too as I watched him do his rallies is a lot of politicians might like Elizabeth Warren, for instance, they're a scholar, they do a lot of reading, they do a lot of studying, and then they come up with their policy positions based on their studying and reading. Trump is a stand-up comic through and through. He would just throw out policy positions to his crowd, and based on their reaction, that's the position he would take.
And I guess as a stand-up comic, if the audience agrees, if the audience is aware that they already see him as a stand-up comic, we accept when a comic makes a grand exaggeration. We also even accept when a comic says something that we know is completely false. So do you think that when he says, let's build that wall, or he says, lock her up, or whatever it is he's saying, when he's saying something that is truly out there, do you think the audience knows that he is only saying it in the same way that a comic is saying it when they're either trying to do exaggeration or make fun of how off they are?
Well, I think there's this zone of intellectual thought, and I don't know how to describe it. I'm in there myself a lot of times. It's a zone of intellectual thought where you're half serious and half joking at the same time. It's and I don't know how to describe that region, but it's like uh it's like there's some sort of core of truth you're expressing, okay? But maybe you're not, but you're expressing it in a humorous, over the top way. But I mean, exaggeration is a good word for it. Hyperbole is a good word for it. But it's not an adequate word. It's not an adequate word.
But he'll say something insane. Do you think people who support him will go, "Oh, that Trump, ha ha ha"? Like of course he's gonna.
Some of the things he says, some of the things he said in the rallies, you can see the reaction in the crowd, especially the people behind him.
Yeah,
you can see that. Some of the things he says that, he's way over the top. It's crazy, But
we'll let a comic be politically incorrect. Like that comic said something about people from Poland. Well, I wouldn't say that, but they're a comic. They're known for being irreverent. So we can accept that. And when he says something that would be otherwise borderline off, are we giving him that same license that we would give a comic who uses that kind of language? Like, ooh, they're daring. They're going there.
oh, you're asking if we're not taking Trump seriously. If some people don't take Trump seriously.
Well, no, not only just that, but we forgive him in the same way that we might forgive a stand-up comic when they do politically incorrect humor. Like I like Bill Maher, but sometimes he'll say
I don't
something
think
that is
I think a lot.
so like, oh man, that's insane. But it's Bill Maher, so I'm used to him saying that. And that's just like, oh, Trump said something that's it should be really offensive, but because we know that crazy Trump he'll go there.
Well,
we're just thinking he's just trying to get a rise out of he's either trying to get a rise out of me or he's sticking it to those libs. And then he's trying to get a rise out of them or fake news or whatever.
I think a lot of people don't give a pass to comics. Okay, so for instance, look at what happened.
Right, but we're talking with Trump. We're not, so just let's stay on topic for a sec. There are comics that we do like go, oh yeah, it's okay. That's like Andrew Dice Clay. We're not going to see him sing Hallelujah, right? He's going to say some stuff that's offensive, but we'll accept it. So maybe when you go to a Trump rally, you're going the same way that somebody would go to see Andrew Dice Clay goes. They're going to know that he's going to say some stuff that isn't really good, but it's part of the persona.
Well, see, I think that's the whole problem. Okay, yeah, Trump's audience, Andrew Dice Clay's audience, gives him a pass. They don't care. Okay, yeah, as long as they're being entertained, they don't really care that much about the details. Okay.
But that's a really good point. So do you think that moving
but that's
forward,
not true of everybody. That's not true of most people. That's why there's so much hatred of Trump.
Right. Okay? But do you think that is
and Andrew Dice Clay?
Do you think that's an effective way of keeping your audience as a politician? Do you think
to be entertaining?
Forward, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question, and I don't know the answer, but Trump is definitely asking that question right
I mean,
I don't. There's never been a politician that's been so entertaining. We have never had a stand-up comic for president before.
Do you think that the Democrats, either next time out in 2024, and the Republicans too, do you think in 4 years from now, when there's no Trump running for the third term, that both the Democrats and the Republicans are going to start looking at politicians who can do a tight five?
Well, that's the thing, Are
our comedy schools going to be, just overrun by people who are seeking higher political office?
Well, look, that's the thing. Trump understands stand-up comedy better than most stand-up comedians, okay? Because Trump knows that you need to be constantly generating new material. There was an interview Louis C.K. did years ago where he said he used to be one of these comics that would do the same material for like 2 years, 5 years, and hone it, okay? And yeah, maybe that was great in the vaudeville days, but you need to be generating new material all the time. Like George Carlin, he would come out with new material every year. He'd have a new Chris Rock would do a new show every year or whatever for a while. Trump, every rally, Trump is trying out new material.
Well, like a Chris Rock level stand-up comic, he has writers. He has joke writers, in fact. So, some of their material is written by very talented people. And I always feel...
Well, Trump has the whole internet as a joke writer.
Hold on. But seriously, I've met people who do this. The president has a staff of speechwriters. And Chris Rock has people who are his joke writers. And I think there's always a criticism. People go, oh, that comic didn't write the joke. It's therefore not funny. And I would say, no, a comic doesn't need to write their own material. The job of a comic is to deliver that material in a way that connects with the audience and finds humor. And I think if you wrote a joke, if Chris Rock is telling a joke that was written by someone else he hired on his staff, but he tells it in a way that's really funny, it's a funny joke told by Chris Rock. And the same is probably true for Donald Trump. He'll look at something someone will wrote that's funny, and he'll find a way of delivering it that's funny. So,
well,
I mean, that's been around forever for politicians. Politicians have always had funny writers. There's Hollywood the Washington Press Corps always holds a dinner for the president every year. Strangely enough, Trump doesn't go to this one, but all the other presidents would, and they would read their jokes. And, Obama is very funny if you go on YouTube and you hear him tell jokes, but he's funny in a way where he's very dry, he's very reserved, and the people who've written the jokes have written very tight jokes. And I'm guessing, for the most part, he's not deviating from the script.
Well, he's just reading jokes. See, that's the beauty of Trump. He's more like a stand-up who is kind of ad-libbing their set a little bit. He doesn't have it completely memorized. Some stand-up comics do that, okay? Some stand-up comics memorize their material word for word, and I think those are not the best stand-ups. And Trump shows that, like, you can really do a set. You can really do sets where, you don't memorize stuff. You just come up with
a really good comic, they say, isn't a good comic because the jokes they say are funny, but because they have a unique point of view, a comedic persona that the audience can recognize in all of their humor and all of their jokes. And do you think that, unlike, say, Obama or Bush or Clinton or every president, even Reagan, who's just told a joke, that's like a regular civilian just telling a funny joke, because he has invested so much of his career building a persona and a comedic persona and operating out of this comedic persona that allows jokes for him. Because when he was running, he would come up with these derogatory names for the other Republicans, low, what was it? What he called Jeb Bush?
Low energy.
Jeb, right? But it wasn't, look, if I had called him low energy, it wouldn't have landed. But it's because he's got that bully's persona that allows to make that joke land.
Every stand-up every stand-up is a character, has a character
right.
constructed for the
So
stage.
That's what I'm saying. He is in. So it's that because he's already developed the persona over so many decades, so well on TV, in public, in the news, and gossip, that when we see him coming, it's not just that he said low energy, it's the way he says low energy. It's the delivery. Yeah.
Perfect point. This is why celebrities can do better at the polls and beat politicians, because people already know who they are, right?
Even in the debates, if you go back to not just the debates against the Republicans, against Hillary, whoever he debates, he always does the thing where he looks to the audience. Like he's breaking the fourth wall. Like,
well, in that respect,
can you believe she's saying this?
Exactly.
Or he'll do a thing a comic will do where they change their voice. He does that. He does vocal inflection,
right?
Like a comic does, where they go, "I'm gonna let my voice high because I'm making fun."
Right. Right. He's a typical. You know what? If you want to talk about his delivery, like the aesthetics of his delivery,
yeah,
I feel that he is halfway between an American comic and a British comic, and I'm not sure why. Because there's this thing, British comics tend to have like dry deliveries, right?
Yeah.
And American comics tend to like have a joke voice. Like if American comic tells a joke, you know that he just said a punchline because
the
he said it in a punchline voice.
Right, English love understatement, so they're so deadpan that you have to take a moment to realize, oh, that is a joke.
But Trump is halfway in between, and I don't know why that would be. I think it's because he does come from the upper classes. Maybe he has been around more conservative people his whole life.
I think it has nothing to do with where he's from. I just think that he actually figured out how to ape things as the way that a lot of people in comedy do. Most comics I know will ape, will satirize, will be reductionist. That's part of the toolbox. Even the English comics, if you really think about it, when they impersonate other races, they're horribly racist. Most English comics I have seen do like the worst impersonations of people from Germany or France or America, where they all talk like this.
Okay, but I think the thing with Trump is what I'm saying is one reason the press has a problem with him is because he doesn't tell jokes in a joke voice like a typical U.S. comedian would tell.
Right. So then you have to often wonder if in fact, just the other day when he said people should drink, I don't remember, cleaning fluid. Well, whatever.
I think he was. I don't think he was joking. By the way,
as you can tell, I don't really watch the news.
I don't think he was joking on that one.
But hold on. Let me get to the punchline of my own point.
Okay.
Which is that he said I was only joking. Now, any other politician if they said they were only joking after saying something like that, you would go, I call bullshit. But you always have to think with Trump, it is theoretically possible that he was joking, because only someone like him would deliver it that way, and only someone like him might think that was funny, like, or appropriate. That's another thing that I think we think of with comics, is that a lot of stand-up comics, they flaunt their lack of propriety. They are inappropriate in circumstances that requires propriety. And we like them for that, because we're like, oh, that person's an icon smasher. They're being inappropriate when I have to be appropriate. And one of the things that I think Trump does very much like a comic is find the moments to be inappropriate when he should be appropriate.
Well, there are things the jester can say, right, that the king can't say. And Trump is a jester. I mean, there's nothing really kingly about him, right?
But
I mean,
if he's the jester, then the question becomes, and to be really clear, folks, I don't want this to be a political show. The show's for people
I'm talking
like Trump,
purely about aesthetics here, though.
Aesthetic here. But the thing about the jester, classically speaking, is they're the wise fool. They say what everyone thinks.
That's how Trump's fans see him.
But is afraid to say.
Right.
And that is what he does too. He will say the irreverent thing that he thinks his followers or people he thinks are regular people also feel, but they're too afraid to say. And that's like, if you have any comic you like, you love it when your comic says the thing that you've always felt, but if you said it, you would get censored, but they said it and they get applause. And in that sense, it's almost like, as an audience member, whenever I've seen a comic, Eddie Murphy is a good one to pick on. When Eddie Murphy says some outlandish thing that I've always believed to be true back when I was a teenager, I'd be like, oh yeah, I guess if you go to prison, you're going to get raped. And he makes jokes about Mr. T. And, and like, I can't say that joke about Mr. T or prison, but he can. And when he says it, I'm laughing because it's what I'm thinking. And I think that Trump has certainly spent enough time in his life to know what are people's most common feelings that they will keep hidden from their friends and neighbors. Whereas most traditional politicians try to appeal to the spirit of our better angels. They will say the things, they'll use virtue signaling, which is the opposite. They'll be like, I want my running mate for president to have no hands, be legally blind, and not even originally I want an undocumented, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to make fun of the situation. I'm just saying I'm going to make Mother Teresa the vice president, because Mother Teresa is clearly the most virtuous person on earth, and therefore I'm a virtuous person. And I know you, if you believe in Mother Teresa, you'll believe in me, If you believe in kittens and puppies and every baby should have their own basket of fruit, you'll vote for me. And people may not really feel that way, but they will feel compelled to say they feel that way so that their friends and neighbors approve of them. And that's a traditional politician, right? And not in a bad way. Like, I mean, when John F. Kennedy said, what did he say about the going to the moon? America is capable of everything. They appeal to our good qualities. I've never seen a politician do what a comic does and says, hey, I know you're lazy. I feel for you. Lazy is good.
Well, as a stand-up, Trump is a pretty good stand-up. I mean, you can imagine if a stand-up had an act like Trump, right? He would come up on stage in his suit and he'd talk about how rich he is and how much stuff he owns, and then he'd go into talking about how all the politicians are bought by him.
Yeah.
Right. He'd have material about how he bought all the politicians and all you dumb poor people. And
at best, he would be the asshole you love to hate.
That's right. Well, he'd be playing the heel, right?
He'd be playing the heel. He would be playing the heel. And normally when we see politicians, they never play the heel. They either play the everyman. I'm just like you, America. I'm folksy. Or they play our father or mother, like, I know better than you and I care about you and I have compassion for you. But I've never really seen a politician play the heel. I will say, possibly because he's a New Yorker, and if you look at Bernie Sanders, and this you see in Sanders it's not by accident that Larry David does a great Bernie Sanders. because one thing that Sanders does, it's very much like a comic, is he has no time for bullshit. So Sanders isn't like not a great comic, but he'll have those lines of, that's bullshit. And New Yorkers are known for calling bullshit on things very quickly, and that is what do they call that in comedy? Attitude. An attitude joke.
I don't know.
In comedy, you can just tell a joke based on the strength of your attitude, your point of view. I hate this. This thing sucks. Or I love this and I don't care. But it's not even like punchline setup. It's not even like something funny or odd. It's just that your attitude comes across so strongly, without question, with such confidence, that it's just very funny.
Well, I think I want to end this.
Trump knows how to play that too. That's
okay. Well, let's get to the end, because I think this really shows what Trump's weakness is he needs an audience like any other stand-up. Without an audience, he doesn't know what to think. He doesn't know what to say. He doesn't know what positions to take. That's why even after he got elected, he went and kept doing rallies, because he needs to throw out policy proposals to the audience and see how they react. That's how he judges everything, by how the audience reacts. If you can imagine any other stand-up who was president, that's what they would do. Yeah. That's why he's doing the coronavirus hearings, because he can't have a rally. He wants to see how people react on TV, how the press reacts to stuff. What do you think about that?
Well, I'm trying not to make this a takedown on Trump, because there are people who are watching.
Well, I don't think it's a takedown.
But I will say, did I lose you for a second there?
Yeah, but you're back.
Okay. I'll say this much. I think that in a laboratory sense, this president is the first president to show us what would be like if a stand-up comic was president. I personally prefer my stand-up comics to be stand-up comics, and I prefer my presidents to be not stand-up comics. But it may well be that moving forward, everybody who gets elected president after Trump, whether that's in 2020 or 2024, whether that's another Republican or a Democrat, may well be you having to use the skills of a stand-up comic in order to get elected. It'll be interesting to see. Thank you for this very unique and interesting perspective. And again, folks, we just talked about a very controversial person in a very controversial way. If you agree with us, please comment. If you profoundly disagree with us, please leave a comment. We want to hear what you think, because what you say and what you think will inform the kind of shows we'll do in the future. I'm Chris Corbell.
Randall Mills.
Be well, and we'll talk to you again. Bye.